A Mafia boss triggered lockdown mid-flight when his baby wouldn't stop crying, until a black air hostess did something that left the entire cabin speechless. The screaming started 12 minutes after takeoff. Sharp, relentless, cutting through the cabin like broken glass. Passengers shifted, winced, shot irritated glances toward the sound. But not one complained. Not when they saw who was holding the child. Jim Greco sat frozen in his seat, custom suit pulled tight across his shoulders, jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Tattoos crawled up from his collar, old world ink that marked him as someone dangerous, someone powerful. But the baby in his arms didn't care. Eva kept screaming, tiny fists beating against his chest. 6 months old and already trapped in a world she didn't ask for. 6 months since her mother took her last breath bringing her into it. 6 months since Jim Greco, the man prosecutors couldn't touch and rivals feared to name, became something he'd never been before. Helpless. "Sir," his security man leaned close, voice low. "We could request emergency." "No." Greco's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "We stay on schedule." But Eva didn't care about schedules. She didn't care that her father controlled empires or that men bowed when he entered rooms. She only knew pain, and no one could stop it. Greco had tried everything. Bottles. Pacifiers. Rocking her in arms that felt stiff and wrong. Nothing worked. Then his phone buzzed. One line, "Breach confirmed onboard." His blood went cold. 2 taps on the armrest, a silent signal. The cockpit door sealed with a hiss. Lockdown protocol. No movement. No service. The cabin went rigid. Someone on board was a threat. For rows back, Anna Allison heard that cry and felt her body respond like a punch to the chest. She'd managed turbulence, medical emergencies, even a hijacking scare years ago that still gave her nightmares. But this was different. This was a baby in distress, and she knew that sound. Anna had spent 2 years in neonatal crisis units before joining the airline. She'd heard every kind of infant cry. Hunger, discomfort, tantrums. This wasn't any of those. This was pain. She tracked the baby's movements from the galley. Clenched fists. Irregular breathing. The pitch climbing higher, more desperate. That wasn't fussing. That was a medical emergency no one was treating. Because the man holding her was Jim Greco. Anna had recognized him when he boarded. You didn't work executive aviation for 7 years without learning the passengers who traveled under aliases, whose security moved like military units, whose presence made flight manifests classified. Jim Greco was untouchable, but his baby wasn't. "Miss Allison." The chief attendant appeared at her side. Cockpits locked down. "Stay in position. That baby needs help. That's not our concern." Anna turned, and something in her face made him step back. "It's exactly our concern." She stepped into the aisle. Every eye tracked her. She felt their horror. Saw a businessman mouth, "Don't" to his companion. Saw a woman grip her husband's arm in fear. But Anna's legs didn't stop. Past the first row. Past the diplomat. Past the tech executive. Straight toward Jim Greco. His security man blocked her path, hand moving toward his jacket. "Sir." Greco's eyes snapped to Anna, and the impact nearly stopped her heart. Dark. Endless. Absolutely lethal. "I'm a senior air hostess," Anna said, voice somehow steady. "And I need you to listen." Greco didn't speak. Didn't order her away. Anna looked at Eva, and her chest cracked open. That's not a normal cry. She's not hungry or tired. That's a pain response. Something flickered in Greco's face, raw and vulnerable and gone in an instant. I've tried everything, he said, frustration bleeding through. I know. Anna took one step closer. But I've worked neonatal crisis transfers. I know what that sound means. Their eyes locked. You're saying you can help, Greco said. Not a question. A test. I'm saying I have to try. The cabin held its breath. Lockdown still active. A traitor somewhere among them. But none of it mattered. Only the screaming baby. Greco stared at this stranger who'd walked into his world without permission, without fear, without any idea what she'd just done. Do it, he said. Anna reached for Eva and felt the tiny body trembling. Burning up. She's got a fever, Anna said sharply. How long has she been like this? Greco's face went pale. I didn't. I thought she was just... We need to cool her down now. Anna was already moving, cradling Eva with practiced hands. Get me cool water and cloths. Move. The guard looked at Greco, who nodded once. Anna didn't wait. She carried Eva to the rear galley, her training taking over completely. Behind her, Jim Greco followed. The most dangerous man in the underworld was following an air hostess because she was the only person who could help his daughter. And Anna Allison, who'd walked away from this work after one case destroyed her, felt everything slam back into focus. She knew this cry. And she wasn't going to let another baby die. But before you find out what Anna does that shocks everyone, and what it costs her, subscribe now because what happens next will blow your mind. Back to the plane. Eva's temperature was 102.4. Anna worked fast, laying her on the counter, cooling her neck and forehead with damp cloths. Greco filled the doorway, watching with terrifying intensity. Ear infection, Anna said. Common. Treatable. But painful, which is why nothing worked. I should have known, Greco's voice cracked. You couldn't have. Anna kept working, humming low notes that seemed to reach through Eva's pain. The baby's cries weakened. Then stopped. Greco stared as his daughter, the child he couldn't comfort for 6 months, fell asleep in a stranger's arms. Thank you, he whispered, and it sounded like surrender. Anna carefully placed Eva back into his arms. You're not helpless. You just needed to know what to look for. I'm not any parent, he said quietly. No, Anna agreed. But maybe that's not what she needs you to be. She walked away, heart racing, hands shaking. Behind her, Jim Greco stood holding his sleeping daughter, feeling his entire world shift. A stranger had just shown him courage he hadn't seen in years. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than any threat he'd ever faced. The baby's cry had stopped. But the storm it awakened was just beginning. Jim Greco had killed his first man at 19. No hesitation. No regret. Clean shot, clean exit. That night taught him the fundamental rule that built his empire: control everything, or lose everything. For 23 years, that principle never failed him. Until Eva. He stood in the galley doorway, watching his daughter sleep in his arms, and felt the ground he'd spent decades hardening begin to crack. The air hostess had done in minutes what he couldn't do in 6 months. She'd made his child stop screaming. It should have been him. 6 months. 6 months since Isabella took her last breath in that sterile delivery room, her hand going cold in his while Eva's first cry filled the silence. The doctors said it was an embolism. Rare. Unpredictable. No one's fault. Greco didn't believe in no one's fault. Someone was always responsible. Someone always paid. But there was no one to pay for this. No throat to crush. No empire to dismantle. Just an empty penthouse and a baby who needed things he didn't know how to give. Sir. His security chief, Marcus Hale, appeared in the aisle. Ex-Delta Force, scar across his jaw, loyalty bought with blood and money. We need to talk. Greco nodded once, adjusting Eva carefully in his arms. The movement still felt foreign. Awkward. Like holding explosives he didn't know how to defuse. They moved to the rear section, away from the other passengers. Marcus glanced at the sleeping baby, something almost human flickering across his face before the mask returned. Castellano's man, Marcus said quietly. Row 7. Been texting coordinates since we took off. Greco's blood went cold, but his expression didn't change. How long have you known? Confirmed it 15 minutes ago. Wanted to be sure before lockdown. And now? Now he knows we're onto him. Marcus's hand rested near his weapon. Question is what we do about it before we land. Greco looked down at Eva. She'd been screaming when the message came through. When he'd tapped the armrest and sealed the cabin. When his world split into two threats he couldn't control simultaneously. Betrayal at 30,000 feet and a daughter burning with fever. For the first time in his life, Jim Greco had frozen. Not from fear. From something worse. Helplessness. Keep him contained, Greco said, his voice flat. I want names. Everyone he's contacted. Everyone who knew we'd be on this flight. Already on it. Marcus paused. The air hostess, Anna Allison. Greco's jaw tightened. What about her? She's got a sealed file. High-level clearance incident 3 years back. Neonatal emergency evacuation during a political extraction. She was part of the crisis team. Marcus's eyes narrowed. She's not random, boss. The words hung between them like smoke. Nothing in Jim Greco's world was random. Every kindness hid a blade. Every stranger was a threat until proven otherwise. It was how you survived when everyone wanted you dead. But he'd seen Anna's face when she held Eva. Seen the way her hands moved with practiced certainty. Seen grief in her eyes that mirrored his own. That wasn't an act. Was it? Run a full background, Greco said finally. But quietly. I don't want her spooked. You think she's connected to the breach? I think I don't believe in coincidences. Greco looked down at Eva again, his daughter's face peaceful in sleep. And I think anyone who gets this close to my child needs to be verified. Marcus nodded and disappeared back down the aisle. Greco stood alone in the dimmed cabin, holding the only thing in his world he couldn't afford to lose, knowing that somewhere among these passengers was a man who'd sold him out. Control everything, or lose everything. But how did you control a baby who wouldn't stop crying? How did you control grief that hit you at 3 a.m. when Eva woke up screaming for a mother who'd never hold her again? How did you control the fact that a stranger just proved you were failing the one person who needed you most? Eva stirred against his chest, and Greco's arms tightened instinctively. He'd built an empire on fear and precision. He'd survived wars, betrayals, and federal investigations that should have buried him. But none of it prepared him for this, a 6-month-old child who'd just shown him exactly how powerless he really was. And now, trapped at 30,000 feet with a traitor in his cabin and a woman whose compassion felt too perfect to be real, Jim Greco faced the most dangerous realization of his life. He had no idea who to trust anymore, including himself. Anna's hands trembled as she returned to the galley, adrenaline finally catching up to what she'd just done. She'd walked directly up to Jim Greco, touched his child, broken every protocol that kept crew safe from passengers like him. And she'd do it again. Anna. Chief Attendant Rodriguez cornered her near the coffee station, voice tight. What the hell was that? That was a medical emergency. That was a breach of what? Protocol that says we let babies suffer because their fathers are dangerous. Anna's voice stayed low, controlled. 7 years of executive aviation had taught her how to stay calm when everything screamed at her to panic. She had a fever, David. Another 30 minutes and we'd be diverting for a pediatric emergency. Rodriguez's jaw worked. He knew she was right. You should have consulted me first. There wasn't time. He stared at her, then exhaled sharply. Your file says you're crisis-trained. I'm starting to see why. Anna didn't respond. Her file said a lot of things. Most of it was classified. 3 years ago, she'd been part of an emergency medical team during a political evacuation in Syria. A diplomat's newborn, critical condition, rebels closing in. Anna had kept that baby alive for 6 hours in the back of an armored transport while gunfire echoed outside. The operation was successful. The family survived. And Anna's involvement was buried so deep that even mentioning it could end her clearance. She'd walked away from trauma response work after that. Told herself she was done with crisis situations. Done with life or death decisions. Then she heard Eva Greco's cry and everything she tried to bury came roaring back. Anna moved to the cabin window, watching clouds streak past at 500 miles per hour. Her reflection stared back, exhausted eyes, tight jaw, uniform slightly wrinkled from holding a feverish baby. She'd noticed things no one else had. Eva's clenched fists, not anger but pain response. The irregular breathing between screams, respiratory distress building. The pitch climbing higher and higher, a baby signaling something was critically wrong. Other passengers heard noise. Anna heard a medical emergency. But it wasn't just professional training that made her move. It was something deeper. Something personal she didn't want to examine too closely. She'd lost someone once. Not a child, worse. She'd failed to save someone she should have saved, and it had shattered something inside her she didn't know could break. Eva's cry had reached into that broken place and demanded she try again. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Background check initiated. Don't be alarmed. Anna's blood went cold. They were investigating her. Of course they were. You don't approach a man like Jim Greco without consequences. His security would dig into every corner of her life, looking for threats, connections, leverage. They'd find the sealed file eventually. Maybe not the details, but enough to know she wasn't just an air hostess. Anna deleted the text and steadied her breathing. She'd made her choice. She'd walked into that aisle knowing exactly what it would cost her. Some prices were worth paying. Miss Allison? A passenger from row 5 gestured to her. Could I get some water? Anna nodded, slipping back into her professional mask. Smile. Efficiency. The trained calm that made elite passengers feel safe at 30,000 feet. But inside, her mind raced. The lockdown was still active. Greco's security was moving through the cabin with military precision. Something was happening beyond Eva's fever, something that made a Mafia boss seal his own aircraft mid-flight. And Anna had just placed herself directly in the center of it. She'd seen the way Marcus Hale looked at her when Greco handed Eva back. Not gratitude. Assessment. She was a variable now. A question mark in a world where questions got people killed. Anna poured water into a glass, hands steady despite the storm building inside her. She'd broken protocol to save a baby. Now she had to survive whatever came next. Because men like Jim Greco didn't forget debts, and they never stopped watching the people who got close enough to matter. Anna had already crossed the line once. Now she was about to cross it again. Eva's temperature had dropped, but the baby was still restless, whimpering in Greco's arms as the fever broke. Anna watched from the galley, saw the way he held her, too stiff, too uncertain, like a man defusing a bomb he didn't understand. Eva needed more than medical intervention. She needed comfort. And Jim Greco had no idea how to give it. Anna made her decision before she could second-guess it. She stepped into the aisle and walked straight toward him. Every head turned. The cabin went silent except for Eva's soft whimpers. Greco's guards shifted immediately. Marcus Hale's hand moved toward his jacket. The second guard stepped into the aisle, blocking her path. "Sir." "Let her through," Greco said quietly, his eyes locked on Anna. The guard hesitated, then moved aside. Anna stopped directly in front of Jim Greco, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands trembled slightly as he held his daughter. She didn't speak to him. She spoke to Eva. "Hey, sweetheart." Anna's voice dropped to a soft melodic tone. "I know, baby. I know it hurts. But you're safe now. You're going to be okay." Eva's whimpering quieted slightly, her unfocused eyes searching for the source of the sound. Anna reached out slowly, her hands open and steady. "I'm going to hold you for a minute. Just for a minute. Is that okay?" She looked at Greco then. Not asking permission. Offering partnership. For a moment, he didn't move. Every muscle in his body radiated tension, suspicion, the ingrained instinct to trust no one. Then he shifted Eva toward Anna's waiting arms. The transfer was careful, deliberate. Anna cradled Eva against her chest, adjusting the baby's position with practiced precision. Skin-to-skin contact through the thin fabric of her uniform. Eva's feverish cheek against Anna's collarbone. Anna began to hum. Low. Rhythmic. An old lullaby her grandmother used to sing. She regulated her breathing, slow, deep, steady, letting Eva feel the rise and fall of her chest, letting the baby's panicked system sink to her calm one. It was a neonatal grounding technique. One Anna had used dozens of times in crisis situations when babies needed more than medicine, when they needed to remember what safety felt like. The cabin watched in absolute silence. Eva's whimpering faltered. Anna kept humming, kept breathing, kept rocking in tiny, almost imperceptible movements. Her hand supported Eva's head, fingers gently stroking the baby's temple in slow circles. "That's it," Anna whispered. "You're okay. You're safe." Eva's cries softened to hiccups, then to quiet, shuddering breaths, then to nothing. The baby's eyes fluttered closed, her tiny body relaxing completely against Anna's chest. Greco stared. Shock flickered across his face, raw and unguarded and quickly suppressed. But Anna saw it. Saw the distrust warring with relief. Saw a man who'd just watched a stranger do what he couldn't. The cabin felt different now. The tension hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted. Passengers exchanged glances. A woman in row 3 wiped her eyes. Even Marcus Hale's expression softened for a fraction of a second before the professional mask returned. Anna looked up at Greco, Eva sleeping peacefully in her arms, and saw something crack in his carefully constructed armor. "How did you?" His voice was rough, almost broken. "What did you do?" "She needed to feel safe," Anna said softly. "Medicine fixed the fever. But she needed someone to show her that the pain was over." Greco's jaw worked. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "I couldn't do that." "You didn't know how. Now you do." Anna carefully transferred Eva back into his arms, adjusting his hold, showing him how to support the head, where to place his hand, how to keep his breathing steady. "Like this," she murmured. "Let her feel your heartbeat. She knows you. She just needs to feel that you've got her." Greco followed her instructions, his movements stiff at first, then gradually softening. Eva stirred slightly, then settled against his chest, still sleeping. For a moment they stood there, the Mafia boss, the air hostess, and the sleeping baby who'd just changed everything between them. Then Anna stepped back, professional distance returning. But the damage was done. Marcus Hale watched from 3 rows back, phone already out, already running searches, already building a file on the woman who'd just become far too important to his boss's world. And Anna Allison, standing in the aisle of a locked-down aircraft, holding the gaze of the most dangerous man she'd ever met, realized something terrifying. She just made herself unforgettable to someone who never forgot anything. And in Jim Greco's world, that might be the most dangerous thing she'd ever done. 20 minutes of peace. That's all Eva gave them before everything went to hell. Greco was still holding his daughter, finally feeling like he might actually know what he was doing, when Marcus appeared at his shoulder with a tablet and an expression that meant blood. "Confirmed," Marcus said quietly, angling the screen so only Greco could see. "Vincent Calabrese. Row 7. He's been feeding Castellano's crew our location since Newark." The name hit Greco like a fist to the gut. Vincent. 10 years of loyalty. 3 operations that should have killed him but didn't because Greco had his back. A man he'd trusted enough to bring on a secured flight with his daughter. "You're sure?" Greco said, though he already knew the answer. "Phone records. Encrypted texts. He's been planning this for weeks." Marcus's voice was flat, professional. "Castellano's people are waiting in New York. They know exactly when we land." Greco's grip on Eva tightened. His mind raced through scenarios, casualties, exit strategies. But every calculation crashed against the same reality. His daughter was trapped at 30,000 feet with a man who'd just sold them out. "Bring him to the galley," Greco said quietly. "Quietly." Marcus nodded and moved down the aisle with deadly purpose. Greco stood, adjusting Eva carefully, and walked toward the rear galley. Anna was restocking water bottles, her movements efficient and calm. She looked up as he approached, reading his face instantly. "What's wrong?" "Stay back," Greco said, but there was no command in it. Just warning. She didn't move. 2 minutes later, Marcus returned with Vincent Calabrese. Mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of face that blended into boardrooms and crime scenes equally well. He saw Greco waiting and his expression shifted, fear trying to hide behind defiance. "Boss, I don't know what Marcus told you, but—" "Stop." Greco's voice was silk over steel. "You've been feeding our location to Castellano. That's insane. I would never." Marcus held up the phone. "Your phone. Your texts. Stop lying." Vincent's mask cracked. His eyes darted to the emergency exit, to Marcus, back to Greco. "Trapped." "You don't understand," Vincent said, desperation bleeding through. Castellano has my sister. He said if I didn't. So you decided my daughter dies instead? Greco's voice went cold. Dead. The voice that preceded body bags. Eva stirred against his chest, sensing the shift in tension. Her whimper turned to a cry. Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket. Marcus's gun appeared instantly, pressed against Vincent's ribs beneath his suit jacket. Invisible to the cabin, but lethal. Don't, Marcus whispered. But Eva was crying louder now, feeding off the violence simmering in the air. Her screams echoed through the galley, sharp and desperate. Greco's focus split. The traitor in front of him, the daughter in his arms, the gun Marcus was seconds from firing. Then Anna moved. She stepped directly between Greco and Vincent, her body shielding Eva from whatever was about to happen. Give her to me, Anna said firmly, reaching for the baby. Anna, get back. Give her to me now. Greco stared at this woman who just positioned herself in the line of fire, protecting his child from the violence she knew was coming. For the first time in 23 years, Jim Greco hesitated. He handed Eva to Anna. Anna turned immediately, cradling the screaming baby against her chest, humming low and steady despite the guns and the tension and the very real possibility that someone was about to die 3 feet behind her. Marcus, Greco said quietly. Secure him. No shots. Not with civilians present. Marcus moved with brutal efficiency. Vincent was restrained in seconds. Zip ties, hands behind his back, shoved into the galley jump seat. Castellano's people? Greco asked. Already contacted NYPD. They'll be waiting for them, not us. Greco nodded, but his eyes stayed on Anna's back. On the way she'd moved without thinking. Without fear. Just pure instinct to protect his daughter. Eva's cries softened as Anna's humming continued, her practiced calm cutting through the chaos. Vincent slumped in the jump seat, defeated. He'll kill my sister. Your sister's already dead, Greco said flatly. Castellano doesn't leave loose ends. You should have known that. The words hung in the air like an execution. Anna turned then, Eva quiet against her shoulder, and met Greco's eyes. She'd heard everything. Seen everything. And she was still holding his daughter like the baby was the only thing in the world that mattered. She's okay, Anna said softly. But you need to finish this away from her. Greco nodded once. He looked at Eva, sleeping again, somehow peaceful despite the violence that almost consumed her, and felt something inside him break open. 6 inches. If Marcus had fired, if Vincent had drawn his weapon, if the trajectory had been off by 6 inches, his daughter would be dead. And Jim Greco, the man who controlled everything, had been completely powerless to stop it. The cabin lights dimmed as the flight entered its final hour. Vincent was secured in the rear lavatory, Marcus standing guard. Most passengers had fallen into uneasy sleep, exhausted by tension they didn't fully understand. The lockdown remained active, but the immediate threat had passed. Eva slept peacefully in Greco's arms for the first time since takeoff. Anna sat across the aisle, close enough to help if needed, far enough to maintain professional distance. But distance felt like a lie now. She'd stepped between guns for his daughter. She'd crossed every line that mattered. Thank you, Greco said quietly, his voice barely audible over the engine hum. Anna looked up, surprised. Men like him didn't thank people. They paid them or buried them. For what? For stepping in front of a loaded gun for a child you don't know. Anna's expression softened. I know her well enough. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable. just heavy with things neither knew how to say. Her mother died 6 months ago, Greco said finally, the words dragged from somewhere deep and damaged. Embolism during delivery. Doctors said it was instant. No warning. No time to say goodbye. Anna's throat tightened. I'm sorry. I don't know how to do this. Greco looked down at Eva, his voice cracking slightly. I've run organizations. Managed hundreds of people. Survived things that should have killed me. But I don't know how to comfort my own daughter. You just did, Anna said gently. She's sleeping. Because of you. Not me. Because you let me help. That's harder than you think. Greco's jaw tightened. In my world, accepting help means showing weakness. Weakness gets you killed. This isn't your world, Anna said firmly. This is hers. And she doesn't need a king. She needs a father. The words hit harder than any bullet. Greco stared at this woman, this stranger who'd somehow seen through every layer of armor he'd built, and felt something inside him shift. Not break. Shift. Like tectonic plates finding new ground. Who are you? He asked quietly. Really? Anna hesitated. I'm exactly who I said I am. Marcus ran your background. Of course he did. There's a sealed file. High-level clearance. A political evacuation 3 years ago in Syria. Greco's eyes narrowed. You kept a diplomat's newborn alive for 6 hours under hostile fire. Anna's expression didn't change, but her hands tightened in her lap. That operation was classified, she said carefully. I have access to things most people don't. Greco leaned forward slightly. You're not just an air hostess. You're crisis-trained at the highest level. Which means you approaching my daughter wasn't random kindness. You knew exactly what you were doing. I knew she was in distress and no one else was helping, Anna said steadily. That's all that mattered. Is it? Greco's voice held an edge now. Not threat. Something worse. Suspicion. Or were you sent to get close to me? Anna's eyes flashed. You think I'm part of Castellano's operation? That I faked compassion to get near your daughter? I think everyone wants something. And I need to know what you want. I want nothing from you, Anna said, her voice cold now. I helped a baby in pain. If that makes me suspicious in your world, then your world is more broken than I thought. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Greco studied her face, the genuine anger, the exhausted honesty, the complete lack of calculation. He'd seen thousands of lies. This wasn't one. But that made it worse. Because if Anna Allison was exactly who she claimed to be, a woman who risked everything for a stranger's child, then she'd just become the most dangerous variable in his life. Not because she wanted to hurt him. Because she'd made him care. When we land, Greco said quietly, you need to disappear. Anna frowned. What? Castellano knows someone helped Eva. He'll see the footage. He'll identify you. Greco's voice was flat, professional. And he'll use you to get to me. I'm not afraid. You should be. Greco's eyes locked on hers. I protect what's mine. But you're not mine. Which means you're a liability I can't control. Anna stood, her professional mask returning. Then I guess we're done here. She turned to walk away, but Greco's voice stopped her. Anna. She looked back. I meant what I said. Thank you. His voice softened, just slightly. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. But that doesn't mean I can keep you safe from what's coming. Anna held his gaze for a long moment, seeing past the threat to the fear underneath. Maybe I don't need you to, she said quietly, then walked back to the galley. Greco sat alone in the dimmed cabin, holding his sleeping daughter, knowing that in the next 6 hours, he'd have to make Anna Allison disappear for her own protection. Because he'd just realized something terrifying. She wasn't just a stranger who'd helped his child anymore. She was someone he couldn't afford to lose, which made her the perfect weapon for anyone who wanted to destroy him. The descent alarm chimed softly through the cabin. Anna felt the pressure change in her ears, the subtle shift as the aircraft angled toward New York. 40 minutes until landing. 40 minutes until whatever came next. She busied herself with pre-landing procedures, collecting cups, checking seatbelts, maintaining the professional facade that had kept her safe for 7 years. But everything had changed. Marcus appeared at the galley entrance, his expression unreadable. "Miss Allison, Mr. Greco needs a word." It wasn't a request. Anna followed him to the rear section where Greco stood with Eva sleeping against his shoulder. Through the window, city lights glittered in the distance. Home, but somehow different now. "We have a problem," Greco said without preamble. "NYPD will be waiting at the gate. So will federal agents. Castellano's people are in custody, but the press will be there within the hour." "What does that have to do with me?" "Everything." Greco's voice was quiet, measured. "The moment we land, you become part of the story. Woman who calmed the Mafia boss's baby. They'll find your name, your face, your address. By tomorrow morning, you'll be on every news channel." Anna's stomach dropped. "I was just doing my job." "Doesn't matter. Castellano will see the footage. So will everyone else in my world who wants leverage against me." Greco shifted Eva carefully. "And they'll see you as exactly that. Leverage." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying Marcus has arranged an alternate exit. Private car. Secure location. You'll leave before the official deplaning." Anna stared at him. "You're smuggling me off my own flight?" "I'm keeping you alive." No threat in his voice. Just cold fact. "You stepped into my world to help my daughter. I respect that. But respect doesn't stop bullets." The weight of it settled over Anna like concrete. She'd known there would be consequences. But this, being extracted like a witness, hidden like an asset, this was more than she'd bargained for. "I can't just disappear," Anna said. "I have a job. A life. You'll have both. Just differently for a while." Greco met her eyes. "I'm not threatening you. I'm not owning you. I'm protecting you from the mess I brought onto your plane." "For how long?" "Until I've neutralized the threat. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Anna's mind raced. Her apartment. Her schedule. Her carefully constructed normal life that suddenly felt impossibly fragile. "What if I refuse?" "Then you'll be dead within a month." Greco's voice was flat, emotionless. "And I'll have to live knowing that helping my daughter got you killed. I've got enough blood on my hands. I don't need yours." Anna looked at Eva, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that she'd just appended a stranger's entire existence. "This is insane," Anna whispered. "This is survival." Greco glanced at Marcus, who nodded once. "When we land, Marcus will take you to a car. You'll be escorted to a secure apartment in Brooklyn. Everything you need will be provided. You'll have a phone. You can call anyone you trust, but keep it vague." And then what? Then you wait while I clean up the mess. Greco's expression softened slightly. I don't forget debts, Anna. You saved my daughter's life. That means something in my world. It means I protect you, no matter what it costs. Anna wanted to argue, wanted to walk off this plane like nothing had changed. But she'd seen the guns, seen the betrayal, seen exactly how fast violence could erupt in Greco's world. And she'd put herself right in the center of it. This wasn't supposed to happen, she said quietly. I just heard a baby crying. I know. Greco's voice carried something almost like regret. But that baby was mine. And now you're in this whether you want to be or not. The plane touched down with a gentle thud, tires screeching against runway. Anna gripped the counter as the aircraft slowed, reality catching up to adrenaline. In 10 minutes, she'd walk off this plane into a life she didn't recognize. Marcus reappeared with a jacket. Put this on. Hood up. Stay behind me. Anna took the jacket with numb fingers. It was too big, clearly meant to obscure her frame, her identity. She looked at Greco one last time. If I do this, if I let you protect me, this ends when the threat ends. I don't belong to your world. You never will, Greco promised. But for now, you're in it. And I keep what's mine safe. I'm not yours. No, Greco agreed, something complicated flickering in his expression. But you're under my protection now. Which in my world is the same thing. Anna pulled the hood up, feeling the weight of the decision settle into her bones. She'd boarded this flight as a senior air hostess with a normal, quiet life. She was about to deplane as a woman under the protection of a Mafia boss. And in Jim Greco's world, that was the most dangerous thing she could possibly be. The news spread through Greco's network like blood in water. Within 12 hours, every crew from Boston to Miami knew about the betrayal at 30,000 feet. Vincent Calabrese, 10-year veteran, trusted lieutenant, had sold out the boss and paid for it with his life. The official story was a heart attack in federal custody. Anyone who'd worked for Greco longer than a month knew better. Castellano's people had been arrested at JFK. 3 of them. Federal charges, no bail. The operation to ambush Greco had collapsed before it began. But the damage was done. Jim Greco stood in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Eva sleeping peacefully in the nursery down the hall, and realized that surviving wasn't the same as winning. Restructuring's complete, Marcus said from the doorway, tablet in hand. Promoted Chun to head of East Coast operations. Brought in external auditors for all senior staff. Anyone with access to your schedule gets vetted weekly. Good. Greco's voice was flat. Empty. Vincent's sister was confirmed dead. 2 weeks before the flight. Castellano used her death as leverage. Marcus paused. Vincent thought he was saving her. He died believing the lie. Greco said nothing. He'd built an empire on loyalty, but loyalty was only as strong as the last person who broke it. Vincent had taught him that. What about Anna Allison? Marcus asked carefully. Still in the Brooklyn apartment. No contact. No movement. She's following protocol. For now. Marcus studied his boss. You know she won't stay hidden forever. I know. 3 weeks had passed since the flight. 3 weeks of restructuring, interrogations, power plays to fill the vacuum Vincent left behind. 3 weeks of Eva sleeping through the night, eating properly, smiling when Greco walked into the room. 3 weeks of Greco replaying that moment in the galley when he'd handed his daughter to a stranger because he couldn't protect her himself. "You've been different," Marcus said quietly, "since the flight." "Have I?" "Eva's thriving. You're actually sleeping. But you're also pulling back from operations. Declined the Newark expansion. Turned down the Miami partnership. That's not like you." Greco turned from the window. "Maybe I'm tired." "You're never tired." Marcus's expression hardened. "You're recalculating." He was right. For 23 years, Jim Greco had built his world on one principle: control everything or lose everything. But Eva had shown him a truth he'd spent decades avoiding. Some things couldn't be controlled, and trying to control them would destroy what mattered most. "I'm making changes," Greco said finally. "Delegating more. Reducing my exposure. Eva needs a father who comes home, not a ghost who runs an empire." "The empire doesn't run itself." "Then maybe it's time it learned to." Greco's voice was steel-wrapped in exhaustion. "I almost lost her, Marcus. Because I was too focused on power to notice she was sick. Because I couldn't do the one thing a father should be able to do, comfort his own child." "You're not just any father. That's the problem." Silence settled between them. Marcus finally nodded. "I'll handle the transition planning." Quietly. "Good. And Marcus?" Greco's eyes locked on his security chief. "Keep eyes on Anna. I want to know if anyone approaches her. Anyone shows interest. I need to know before they move." "She's still a target?" "She'll always be a target." Greco's jaw tightened. "Anyone who knows she matters to me will try to use her. That's how this world works." Marcus left without another word. Greco poured himself whiskey he wouldn't drink and stared at the city sprawling beneath him. Somewhere out there, Anna Allison was living in an apartment she didn't choose, protected by men she didn't know, paying the price for compassion. He'd promised to protect her. But protection was just another kind of cage. Across the city, Anna stood at the window of her Brooklyn safe house, watching shadows move in the street below. She'd been back to her apartment once, escorted, supervised, 20 minutes to grab essentials before Marcus's team swept her away again. Her supervisor at the airline had been told she was on emergency medical leave. Her friends thought she was visiting family. Everyone believed the lies. But Anna felt the truth in her bones. She was being watched. Not just by Greco's people. By others. She'd catch glimpses. A car that appeared too often, a man at the bodega who looked away too quickly. People knew who she was now. The woman who'd calmed Jim Greco's baby. The stranger who'd gotten close when no one else could. She'd become valuable. And in Greco's world, valuable meant dangerous. Her burner phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Clear to return to work next week. Stay vigilant. 3 weeks of protection, and now they were releasing her back into her life like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Anna had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She'd entered a world where kindness had consequences and compassion made you a target. And somewhere in Manhattan, Jim Greco was making decisions that would reshape his empire, because a stranger on a plane had shown him that power meant nothing if you couldn't protect what mattered. Neither of them knew it yet, but the moment Eva stopped crying had set in motion something far bigger than either could control. A man learning to choose his daughter over his empire, and a woman who'd become the catalyst for a transformation that would either save him or destroy them both. 6 months later, Jim Greco stood in the lobby of Mount Sinai Hospital, Eva balanced on his hip, waiting for her pediatrician appointment like any other father. No security detail. No tailored suit. Just jeans, a sweater, and a diaper bag slung over his shoulder that still felt foreign but less wrong than it used to. Eva babbled happily, her chubby hands reaching for his face. 12 months old now. Healthy. Thriving. The ear infections had cleared with treatment. The fever that had nearly broken them both was a distant memory. But the lesson it taught him remained. Mr. Greco? The nurse called from the doorway. He stood, adjusting Eva with the practiced ease of someone who'd finally learned what he was doing. 6 months of choosing her over Empire. 6 months of delegation, restructuring, stepping back from operations that would have consumed him a year ago. His network was smaller now. Tighter. More legitimate. He was still dangerous. Still powerful. But different. She's doing beautifully, Dr. Patel said after the examination, smiling at Eva's giggles. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I'm just showing up, Greco said quietly. Every day. It was the truth. The Empire hadn't collapsed without his constant control. It had adapted. Evolved. And Greco had learned something he'd spent 23 years refusing to believe. Survival didn't require total control. It required knowing what mattered. Eva mattered. Everything else was negotiable. Anna Allison walked through the hospital corridor, heading toward the exit after visiting a former colleague in the NICU. She'd returned to work 3 months ago, splitting her time between commercial aviation and volunteer work with neonatal crisis teams. The woman who'd stepped onto that private jet 6 months ago wouldn't have been able to walk back into a NICU. Wouldn't have been able to hold a struggling infant without her hands shaking. But something had shifted that day at 30,000 feet. She'd remembered who she was. What she was capable of. And she'd stopped running from the part of herself she thought was broken. Anna. She turned. Jim Greco stood 10 feet away, Eva on his hip, diaper bag over his shoulder. He looked different. Softer somehow. Less like a man carved from granite and more like someone who'd learned to breathe. Jim. The name felt strange on her tongue. Familiar and foreign at once. They stared at each other for a long moment. Two people whose lives had collided in crisis and diverged into healing. How are you? Greco asked, and it sounded like a real question, not protocol. Good. Back to work. Back to... Anna gestured vaguely. Life. No one's bothered you. Your people made sure of that. Anna smiled slightly. Thank you. For keeping your promise. Greco nodded. Eva reached toward Anna, recognizing something she couldn't name. A voice, a warmth, the memory of safety. May I? Anna asked. Greco handed Eva over without hesitation. Anna held the baby who'd changed everything, feeling the weight of her, the health radiating from her small body. Eva laughed, a pure, joyful sound that echoed through the corridor. She's perfect, Anna said softly. She is. Greco's voice carried something Anna had never heard before. Pride. Not the pride of empire or power. The pride of a father who'd learned what actually mattered. Anna handed Eva back, their fingers brushing briefly. You're different, Anna observed. So are you. It was true. They'd both been broken by that flight. And somehow, they'd both been saved by it. Take care of her, Anna said, stepping back. I will. Greco paused. Anna? What you did that day, I never properly thanked you. You don't need to. I do. Greco's eyes held hers. You didn't just save her life. You saved mine. You showed me that control wasn't strength. That asking for help wasn't weakness. That being a father was more important than being feared. Anna's throat tightened. You figured that out yourself. Because you showed me it was possible. Greco shifted Eva to his other hip. If you ever need anything. I won't. Anna smiled. But I appreciate the offer. They stood there for another moment, two people who'd intersected at the worst possible time and somehow made each other better for it. No romance. No dramatic declarations. Just mutual respect and the understanding that some connections transcend circumstances. Goodbye, Jim. Goodbye, Anna. Anna walked away, hearing Eva's laughter fade behind her. She didn't look back. Some stories didn't need epilogues. They just needed closure. That evening, Jim Greco sat in Eva's nursery, rocking her to sleep. Outside, the city hummed with life. Deals being made, empires rising and falling, power shifting hands. He'd built his world on fear. On control. On the principle that weakness was death. But a baby's cry at 30,000 feet had taught him something more important. Strength wasn't about controlling everything. It was about knowing what to fight for. What to protect. What to let go. Anna Allison had walked into his life for less than 3 hours and changed the trajectory of everything. She'd shown him that compassion wasn't weakness. It was the most dangerous kind of courage. Eva's breathing evened out, her small body relaxing completely against his chest. No crying. No fever. No distress. Just peace. Jim Greco kissed his daughter's forehead and whispered the words he'd never thought he'd mean, I've got you. Always. And for the first time in 23 years, the man who'd controlled empires through fear realized that love, messy, terrifying, uncontrollable love, was the only thing worth building a life around. The cry that once stopped the sky had been replaced by laughter. And in that transformation, both a father and a stranger had found something they'd thought was lost forever, the courage to heal. Jim Greco learned that power means nothing if you can't protect what matters. Anna Allison proved that compassion is the bravest act of all. And Eva? She grew up knowing her father chose her over his empire. Sometimes a baby's cry is exactly what changes everything. If this story hit different, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment. What happens when their worlds collide again? Let me know below. Thanks for watching. Until next time.